The sky over the American countryside was still painted in shades of dark blue and pale gray when Sarah Miller stepped into her field. Dawn had barely broken, and the cold morning air clung to her skin like a reminder of how alone she truly was. She tightened her worn shawl and placed her hands firmly on the wooden plow. The horse, old and slow, exhaled heavily, its breath rising like smoke in the chilly air. Just a year ago, this land had echoed with her husband's laughter. John Miller had been strong, confident, and full of plans. Together, they dreamed of expanding the farm, planting more crops, and raising children who would run barefoot across these fields. But illness had taken him suddenly, leaving Sarah with more than grief. He left her responsibility, debt, and a world that did not wait for widows to heal. Now, every sunrise was a battle. Neighbors passed by on distant roads, their eyes briefly turning toward her field before looking away. In this part of rural America, people believed in strength, but they feared involvement. A widow working alone was a sad sight, one that reminded them how fragile life could be. Sarah pushed the plow forward, the blade cutting into the stubborn soil. Her hands ached, and blisters had already formed beneath her gloves. Each step felt heavier than the last, yet she refused to stop. If she failed to prepare the land before planting season ended, the bank would take everything. This farm was not just property, it was her past, her marriage, and her only future. The sun slowly rose, casting golden light across the wide field. Birds began to sing, unaware of her struggle. Sweat trickled down her forehead despite the cold, and her arms trembled from exhaustion. Still, Sarah pressed on. Pride kept her moving when her body begged for rest. She would not beg for help. She would not give anyone a reason to pity her. As she paused to catch her breath, Sarah looked across the land and whispered a quiet prayer, not for comfort but for strength. She asked for one more day of endurance, one more sunrise she could face without breaking. Somewhere beyond the hills, unseen and unknown to her, a pair of watchful eyes had noticed her lonely fight against the land. Sarah straightened her back, took hold of the plow once more, and walked forward into the light of the morning. She did not know it yet, but this dawn would mark the beginning of a change, one that would test her pride, challenge her independence, and slowly restore her faith in unexpected kindness. The late morning sun stood higher in the sky when William Carter stepped onto the wide porch of his ranch house. From there, his land stretched farther than the eye could see, rolling fields, grazing cattle, and strong fences built over decades. William was known across the county as a hard man, a rich rancher who spoke little and expected obedience. People respected him, but few truly knew him. For several days now, his eyes had drifted toward the smaller field near the eastern road. He had noticed the same figure every dawn, a lone woman guiding an old horse through stubborn soil. He didn't need to ask who she was. Everyone knew about Sarah Miller, the widow who refused to leave her husband's land. Most talked about her quietly. Some admired her courage, others said she was foolish to try surviving alone. William remembered loss too. Years ago, he had buried his own brother, a man who had worked himself to death trying to hold on to land during hard times. That memory stirred something deep within him as he watched Sarah struggle day after day. Without calling for sympathy or permission, William turned toward his foreman. "Take 4 men," he said calmly. "Bring 2 strong horses. Finish her field today." The foreman hesitated. "Sir, she didn't ask for help." William's voice was firm. "She shouldn't have to." By noon, the sound of hooves and wagon wheels rolled toward Sarah's land. She looked up, startled, as dust rose along the edge of her field. Strong horses, sharp tools, and skilled ranch hands moved in without hesitation. One man approached her carefully, removing his hat. "Ma'am," he said respectfully, "we're here to help you with the plowing." Confusion flooded Sarah's face. "Who sent you?" she asked, gripping the plow handle. The man glanced toward the distant hills. "Mr. Carter." Her heart pounded. William Carter's name carried weight, power, control, and authority. She felt a wave of pride rise inside her. Help was kind, but unasked help felt dangerous. Was this charity? Or was it a reminder that her land was weak without a man? As the crew began working, the field transformed. The soil turned smooth, straight lines forming where chaos once ruled. Sarah stood frozen, torn between stopping them and letting them continue. Her arms ached, her body was exhausted, and yet her spirit resisted surrender. She watched in silence as her field came alive under capable hands. Deep inside, she felt something shift, not defeat, but relief. For the first time since her husband's death, the burden did not rest on her shoulders alone. Far away, William Carter watched from a distance, his expression unreadable. He did not go to her. He did not seek thanks. Some things, he believed, were meant to be done quietly, without pride, without ownership, and without asking anything in return. By the time the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, Sarah's field no longer looked like a battlefield. The soil lay smooth and ready, the furrows straight and deep, promising new life. The ranch hands wiped sweat from their brows and quietly began packing their tools. No one laughed loudly. No one claimed credit. They worked with the calm respect of men who knew they were doing something that mattered. Sarah stood at the edge of the field, her heart heavy yet strangely light. She had not spoken much while they worked, but her eyes followed every movement. The pride that once burned fiercely inside her had softened into something wiser. Strength, she realized, did not always mean standing alone. One of the men approached her before leaving. He held out a small pouch of seed grain. "The boss said this might help you get started," he said simply. Sarah's voice trembled. Tell him I didn't ask for charity." The man nodded. He said, "This isn't charity. It's respect." That night, Sarah sat alone at her kitchen table, a single oil lamp lighting the room. She thought of her husband, of the dreams they once shared, and of how close she had come to losing everything. Taking a piece of paper, she carefully wrote a note, short, honest, and from the heart. At dawn, she walked to the edge of William Carter's ranch and left it tied gently to the gate. William found the note later that morning. He read it once, then again. There were no grand words, only gratitude, dignity, and quiet strength. He folded the paper and placed it in his coat pocket, where it would remain for years. Weeks passed. Crops began to rise from Sarah's land, green and strong. She worked hard, but no longer with desperation. Sometimes, from a distance, she would see William riding the fence line, making sure boundaries were clear. They never spoke much, but when they did, it was with mutual respect, two people who understood loss, pride, and the value of silent kindness. The county slowly changed its tone. People no longer saw Sarah as a helpless widow, nor William as a cold rancher. They saw something rare, how power, when used without ego, could restore dignity instead of taking it away. As the harvest season arrived, Sarah stood in her field, the wind moving gently through the crops. She smiled, not because life had become easy, but because she had learned something powerful. Sometimes help comes without permission, not to weaken you, but to remind you that even the strongest roots grow better when the soil is shared.